Hey there, welcome to the Xennial Mindset Show. I'm Marie Mack, born in 1983.
And I'm Enri Pasquino from the crew of 1977. Together, our mission is to unravel the intricate layers of the Xennial mindset, where cherished memories of cassette tapes and rotary phones seamlessly coexist with cutting-edge technology and social media frenzy.
We'll also have some awesome guest Xennials dropping by, bringing their own stories and insights to the table.
So, whether you're a fellow Xennial craving a trip down memory lane, or just curious to know what the Xennial mindset is all about, stick around.
The Xennial Mindset Show is your backstage pass to our world where nostalgia meets innovation. Let's get started.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Xennial Mindset Podcast. We are excited for today's topic. As you all know, joining me is my co-host, Marie Mack. Marie, welcome.
Thank you so much, Amp. You know what? This is a really fun topic. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, I am too. It's actually one of my top 3 picks when we looked at what are we going to talk about. And I think because it was such a big part of my upbringing and, I remember the 80s and 90s. Today's topic, everyone, is going to be pop culture. We are going to talk about TV shows. We're going to talk about movies. And if we have time, we'll talk about a bit of music. But what we wanted to share with you is, what were our favorite shows? How did we feel about them? What do they mean today? Because I think what we were watching and listening to back in the 80s and 90s when we were kids, definitely probably would not be allowed to be aired today.
No, not at all.
So I think, and a lot of controversy when you think about people, the leads in these TV shows and movies today. So yeah, let's dive into it. So let's start talking about TV shows, right? So 80s and 90s, what were the top TV shows? What comes to mind? So we have things like Star Trek. Lots of people into that whole series. I don't know, Marie, was that one of your...
I'm not a Trekkie. I'm pretty sure that's what you're called. I'm not a Trekkie.
Yeah.
I was more on the Star Wars side of things than the Star Trek side of things. I'm sure some other people did that. But yeah, one of the things that was interesting when we were looking at this, I was talking with my husband about it a little bit and talking about like what was influential. And I mean, this movie came out, or not the TV show. So Star Trek came out. I mean, I was like, what, 4, maybe? So
1987.
Yeah. I don't know. Did you watch Star Trek?
I did not. No.
All right. Well, it's out there. So if you're a Trekkie, it's okay. We still love you. You can stay and listen to us. But so Star Trek was definitely one of those shows. And then the other show we had was Who's the Boss?
Oh, big fan.
Yeah.
Absolutely big fan. Absolutely. Yeah. Tony Danza. Yeah. I think that was, really interesting if we think about Who's the Boss back in 84 when it started, and having a single dad become a housekeeper of a rich white, woman who was she a single mom or divorced or something like that? But interesting how, the blended family came together. And that was the 1980s.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy because now it's just, I mean, we keep looking at all this stuff and seeing how is this relevant to what we are going through now in society. And that is just a normal culture, like a blended family, typically.
Absolutely. But back then, I don't even think we looked at it that way. Like, I think back then it was just like, okay, it's a show, and we didn't think more of it. And we didn't think about now that I'm saying it out loud, it's like, oh my God, this is like white, rich woman, single dad. He's the housekeeper. She's the, career woman. But I didn't think anything of it back in the day. But today I'm like, oh my God, that's like really out there, But I think the characters, when you think about Elisa Milano and, Tony Danza, especially Elisa Milano, I think for, in the 80s, for me, everybody wanted to be Elisa Milano, right? Like she was, but it's true, right?
Right.
You had the posters, Teen Beat magazine and all those things, if there's anybody you wanted to aspire to be, it was her. So yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know about today, but Did you watch Who's the Boss?
I did not. I'm not a who's the boss person.
Oh,
Again, I was born in 83, so this came out in
yeah.
84. I was all of like barely trying to walk at this time. So
Yeah.
that's okay. But I remember the show.
Yeah.
Other shows. What else do you have on your list?
Simpsons. The Simpsons. I don't know how many seasons they have, but I feel it's like the never-ending show. I think it's probably one of the longest um, running shows in
It's gotta
history.
be. It's
Yeah,
gotta
it's
be.
definitely. So that started in 1989. Not really a big Simpsons fan, but the occasional. I think I watched it occasionally. I think what interests me about The Simpsons is the fact that and today even more so, are able to kind of predict things that are going to happen, which is really, really weird. Like, have you seen that? Like, it's
I
just
have not. I
no.
don't
Oh my
watch
God.
The Simpsons hardly ever.
Okay, so it's interesting, and I'll have to pull some of those up or maybe put them in the comments. But yeah, if they've actually aired shows and then what they've aired or what like they have done in the show has actually like come true. So it's
Is it
very
like
interesting. And
scary stuff? Like, like
anything like, yeah, I'm gonna have to pull that up. Like while you're chatting, I'm gonna pull that stuff up and share it
yeah.
with people. But if any of you have any recollection of those things, please do put it in the chat. We'd love to have a conversation about it. But it's really, I don't know how they do it or how they did it, or maybe they've just had so many shows that they've come up with different storylines.
It's either
And
that, or is it The Simpsons that's creating this like rift because so many people watch it? Like they're like, oh, we should do that. Like,
uh
is The Simpsons influencing the things that are happening because people are watching it? Does that make sense?
You know, yeah, no, it does make sense. But when I pull these up, you're going to say there's no way. Like I
Okay,
could get it. Like okay, like you know what? Like we're going to launch
a
a red
fashion
balloon on
trend or
on
something.
like New Year's Eve 2020. Like I could get that. But these are big world events that are happening that like literally are like yeah tying back to some of the Simpson episodes. So
Now I'm gonna have to start watching it just to see if I can figure out the future.
yeah, I'm gonna say that, or just Google. Don't even like you'll have to watch a lot of episodes, but yeah, that I think that was an interesting one. A couple of other ones that were really popular. Dallas, 1987. I don't think you watched that. I watched it. Who Killed JR? All of that wonderful stuff. Dallas came out with a series. They came back. They came back a couple of years ago, and it's a Netflix series. Rich family, all of that. Little crazy, but soap opera kind of show. That was really big, probably with the older crowd, less our age. But if
Hmm.
you kind of went into the 90s, you watched that. I'm going to save the one we're going to talk about next, but there was also Knight Rider and Family Ties. So
Yeah,
Family Ties is one I think we're going to kind of talk to our viewers about and our friends, and
and
also the Cosby Show.
these are the '80s shows.
These are the 80s shows, yes.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I forgot like the shows that we did watch that we both have in common. The A Team. How do you feel about that? Love the A Team.
Yes. So the
Yeah.
A Team, I feel like, is created quality GIFs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like our world today is made up of all these little funny things that we send each other, which of course, like nobody had a phone back in the day. So you didn't text somebody some really crazy GIF, but I feel like the A Team is a really solid. You know what I loved about the A Team? I love the fact there were like all these different types of characters and they just happened to be together
Hmm.
in one thing. It wasn't like, oh, this is a family. It makes sense. This is a mom, a dad, or whatever, a kid. It was just like these random people and they just happened to be the A Team. And so, absolutely fascinating show. I feel like the other one is also Full House. I was a huge
Yeah.
Full House fan.
Yeah.
Mary Kay and Ashley, of course. I think that they were born very close to when I have to look that up, but they were born very close to when I was. So of course I'm like resonating with them. I don't know where they are now, but I remember looking them up recently. And of course they're like models and all the gorgeous stuff, but I don't know if they did much after like Full House stuff.
I think they have a fashion empire, if I'm
Of
not
course they do.
mistaken.
Of
Yeah,
course
they
they do. I
do.
mean,
Yeah.
what are you going to do if you're Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen? Just go create a fashion empire.
Yeah.
So
It's crazy how you resonate, like you go towards Mary Kay and Ashley Olsen, and I'm more, Candace. I think it's Candace Cameron is her name.
Yeah.
So it's just like, even though we're not that far apart, like I was like more about her and you're more about the younger ones. Yeah, Full House made a comeback too, right? They made a
Yeah.
comeback a couple of years ago. And that was really great. And I think that it makes sense, like those shows that were succeeded in the 80s and 90s to make that comeback. They are able to grab on to the people that really like that were fans, and then this new generation, right? So I think really smart from that front. Let's talk about the Cosby Show.
Oh, the Cosby Show. So definitely watch the Cosby Show. We have it coming out. It says 1984. So still pretty young, but that Cosby Show went on forever, and I feel
Yeah.
like we were really in it. Now, of course, a lot of people resonated with the Cosby Show. A lot of people watched it. I remember this being conversation, like at school and stuff like that. But now, current culture is we have Bill Cosby. So I don't know how you feel about that, because you watched the Cosby Show as well, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Religiously.
Yeah.
So
how do you feel about, Bill Cosby? Because, okay, just to remind anybody who hasn't heard, I mean, take a look around. But in 2021, he was released from prison for serving, after he served 3 years for sexual assault, rape, all the bad things that are out there having to do with sexual harassment. So all of this was happening during the time that he was filming and a part of the Cosby Show. So we're watching something as kids and thinking it's all wonderful and great and well and good, and then we're learning decades later that he was just really in some really not kind, or he was accused. I don't know how all that legally goes, so I'm sorry to Bill Cosby if you're hearing this. However,
we hope he is.
it's out there, and it's a thing that has been said, and he went to prison for it. So I feel like somewhere along the way somebody thought that this actually happened. So what does that do, Anne Marie, for your view of the Cosby Show, knowing now what's going on with Bill Cosby?
Really good question. I think for me, it doesn't change how I feel about the Cosby Show. I think it changes how I feel about Bill Cosby, right? As a human and individual today. But I think it was part of, it was part of my upbringing, and I watched it, and they were like the perfect all-American family. He was a doctor, she was a lawyer. We grew up with their children,
Yeah.
like every day we tuned in, and they went through the hardships of life, and just kind of the ups and downs of family and growing up, in society and all of that. And I think that the show itself was great. Does it change anything? No. The show will, how I view the show and what they brought to the world, and what they were trying to achieve and all that stuff doesn't change at all my perception of the show. It does change my perception of Bill Cosby. If he was still acting today, would I watch his movies? No, I wouldn't. Would I,
Right.
like, I think it sucks. And I think that, we're seeing this pattern a lot today, where a lot of the actors, actresses, primarily actors or producers or directors are now, and even, athletes are, are being like, they're coming out. A lot of women are coming out with allegations towards these people because they didn't feel like they were able to do that back in the 80s and 90s. And maybe they did. I just don't think we have the media, and they aren't like, I think it's just a lot more, it blows up on the news networks, it blows up on social media, it blows up on all of these channels that we now have to, and it's so much easier for people today. People feel more comfortable, right?
Yeah, I
It's
guess
like,
so. I think it's definitely an interesting dynamic, because we're watching these shows that were pivotal in our childhood. And I think we're going to go through the 90s too, because you guys,
yeah,
I'm sure there are other people, Xennials, that are listening, or other people in here who just like, okay, 90s shows too. But at the same time, like, it's a different world. Like, a current show now is got to be real careful with what they say, how they say it, what they're portraying. And I don't think it's bad. I think this is an important part of our societal shifts. But it is really interesting to go back and watch these shows. Or, I have kids. So we'll go back and we'll watch some of the old 90s or old Disney shows. And on those shows, you're just like, okay, we have Captain Hook in the original Disney Peter Pan, who's like smoking up a storm with like huge cigars and everything. And you're just like, this is insane. Like, this is not something that would be typical in a Disney show, is for that to be portrayed. So it's just, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just something that is interesting in my mind to say, what was okay back then isn't necessarily okay right now, but it's still developed into who we are as people. And I think we're pretty awesome. So that's pretty good.
I agree.
Agreed. All right. So
Yeah.
I'm going to run through these real quick just so we have the 80s. So we had Star Trek, Who's the Boss, Simpsons, Dallas, The Cosby Show, of course, Knight Rider, Family Ties, A-Team, Full House. If any of those were shows that you're like, oh my gosh, that was me totally, please let us know, because we want to make sure we're not the only ones who are watching an exorbitant amount of TV when we were little. So that's good. Do we want to go through the 90s? Because 90s shows, I mean, for me, let's see, where was I? That would have been pivotal years. I mean, I would have in my teenage years in the 90s. So big shows here.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's kick it off with Seinfeld.
Seinfeld. Not a fan.
Not a fan either. And you know what? People like live and breathe Seinfeld. And, you'll go to a party and people are like, do you remember this happened in Seinfeld? And he said this and Kramer that. And I'm like, I have no idea. I tried watching it today, still can't get into it. I'm like, I feel like sometimes you're like, I got to do it, right? Like, I just got to watch it, right? So that I can understand what they're talking about. But no, not a big fan. I think it's probably just a comedy. It's not my kind of comedy. Home Improvement, 1991.
Home Improvement. Yeah, I was a big Home Improvement. I'm a big Tim Allen fan. Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just because he was like building stuff and he looked kind of cool. I don't know. Lots of Tim Allen in my house. Yeah. Anything Tim Allen, really.
Yeah, he's great. You know what? I did not watch Home Improvement, but I did watch his new show. So it's interesting, he's pretty funny. And I think I can relate more to like what he's saying today than, I was like you in my teenage years, can't believe it, graduating, in the 90s and going to college. So yeah, I think that one's an interesting one. And a lot of people watch Seinfeld, Home Improvement, ER. Not my thing.
Didn't watch ER either.
No.
I heard it was a really popular show, but I don't know if it was just the timing or, the other thing I guess we can go over to this in just a second, but one of the biggest things in the 90s that isn't necessarily a thing now was the primetime spot, right? Like, yes. Was I staying up late enough to watch ER? I don't even know when it was on TV. So I feel like maybe that wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I think it was probably a later time slot. I think, it's either you're into these hospital shows or you're not. And I think it's, if you look at today, it's Grey's Anatomy, right? I don't know what season they're on. They're probably on like 20 something season. So it's either you like it or you don't. Obviously it wasn't our thing, but doesn't mean it wasn't other people's things. I know that some great stars came out of it. George Clooney was in it. Probably where his career started or, he became popular. But yeah, so if you're a fan of ER, just, drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear, what did you like about it and who were your favorite characters? A couple of other ones, Roseanne, that came, we talked about Roseanne and how we feel about Roseanne. And I feel that was either you loved it or you hated it.
I'm on the not so much. No, yeah. I would pass on Roseanne on a primetime spot. So.
Yeah. And you know what? I think it's the opposite of the Cosby Show, right? It's like Roseanne, Cosby Show, two completely different families, and two, like different comedy, right? So I think you really have to, you're drawn to different types of shows. And I think, that's just, it's either you love it or you hate it. And they did make a comeback, and obviously Roseanne didn't last on that one for some words that she said, but the rest of the crew went on, and I think they're still on the air, which is great for them. What else do we got here? We have Law and Order, and last but not least, Friends.
Friends.
We can't go without talking about Friends. I
No.
think for me, Friends is a classic. I'm not a I won't watch shows twice. I don't do reruns, but Friends, I think I really resonated with that one, and I could just watch it over and over and over from season one till the end.
Yeah. I don't remember watching Friends a lot, but I feel like I watched it later. Like I went back
Hmm.
and rewatched it because you can go back and,
Yeah,
maybe it was some kind of college thing. Maybe it was like a COVID thing. I don't know. There was
yeah.
something where you're like, well, what do we sit down and just watch? And Friends came up, which was fantastic. And current events sort of thing. If we bring, we bring Friends to the top of our list. This is a pivotal thing in the 90s, like developed a whole lot of not only like how we saw each other, but like the comedy that's out there, the way people
Hmm.
were dressing, like it really influenced an entire nation at that point. And so, current event for us, of course, at this recording, Matthew Perry just passed away. And that obviously shook the whole world in general. But then to listen to what his life is about, and he came out with a memoir at the end of 2022. So as we were talking about this, I went ahead and I read that, read slash listen. Y'all will get to know me that I don't really sit down and read books. I would rather listen to them at like 2x and then read it as I go. So that's been a technique of how I get through so many books. But I read that this week. And his life is just absolutely fascinating. The biggest thing for me, first, we have a pivotal character in our upbringing as a part of
Hmm.
our lives that has passed away. And then we have so many people. I don't know how many people every year you're like, oh, this actor passed away, that singer passed away, and there's some kind of drug use, and there's some kind of something, and there's some kind of something. And you're just like, oh, God bless, man. Like, this sucks that this happened to this person. Um, but when I was reading Matthew Perry's book, he had a ton of drug abuse. He had a ton of stuff. We'll put a link to in the description with a link to his book just so you guys can take a look at it. But um, all of these things, and the thing I came away with that from reading that was like he got over all of this, and this was
Hmm.
published in 2022. So now we're at the end of 23, and he mysteriously passed away in his hot tub. At the time of this recording, I don't know if you've seen something, Emery, but we don't really have a technical reason that he actually died. Like nobody's coming out and saying it was drug or alcohol or a heart attack. I don't know. We don't know why at this technical moment. So, but it doesn't seem like he was using. It doesn't seem like he was, drinking. It doesn't seem like he was doing anything that he used to do for his entirety of his life. And so it just really is a bummer. Not only is it a bummer because we lost a good actor, but for me, it was so much of a bummer because he had really worked for decades to turn his life
Hmm.
around, and he did. And then he still passes away in his hot tub. So kind of a bummer. I don't know. Did you get to read that book?
I did not. It is on my list. I definitely during the holidays want to listen slash read the book. I heard, yeah, a lot of people when he passed did read his book, so it'll be interesting to see. But I do know for a fact that he did overcome a lot of issues in his life. He was, when they did the reunion, he was there. He obviously didn't look the same, and you could see that he went through quite a bit. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, pivotal part of our upbringing. I think, when you talked about the styles, and, Monica and Chandler's love story and all of that stuff, and just the relationship that they had as friends and what friendship means. And, it's definitely a show that played a big role and impact in people's lives. And, you know, every Thanksgiving is, are you having a Thanksgiving or a Friendsgiving, right? Because
Right.
they made
Yeah.
a big thing about, Thanksgiving, and, US Thanksgiving just passed. So it's yeah, it's definitely one I think that will be there for a while. I don't
Yeah.
think people will forget about Friends or Matthew Perry or the group. So very sad. But yeah, let's move on to the next topic. So we just got through TV shows of the 80s and 90s. Let's move over to movies and see what we have in common, Marie, and what was
Okay.
popular back then. So, 80s. So we have a couple of interesting movies. Back to the Future.
I love
Everybody's
Back to the
like,
Future.
I feel like
Like, who
everybody's got to be a
doesn't?
fan.
Like,
I know.
if you don't like Back to the Future, please let us know, because first, we just need to have that there's people that don't like it.
Mhm.
But second, like, all of the funny lines, this is where my GIF mindset comes from. Like, there's so many funny things that are in there, and they come back all the
Yeah,
time. So
yeah.
I
The
love Back to the Future.
DeLorean, Back to the Future. I
Lauren.
feel like, yeah, they can produce all the memorabilia in the world, and I think people would just like,
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's
just buy it up.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think we'll talk about Michael J. Fox and, what he's gone through. I did have a chance to watch his movie, but that is definitely a big one. A couple of other ones that came out in the 80s are The Breakfast Club, The Goonies. Did you watch any of those?
I watched both of them, but I don't think that I was like hardcore. Same Goonies, some good lines in there as well.
Some
So I'm
cute,
just gonna say
cute,
that.
cute guys as well.
Yeah, why
When you're
not?
younger. Gremlins, Nightmare on Elm Street.
No, I'm not gonna go with either one of those. I'm gonna
No,
pass. No.
no, I agree. I did watch Gremlins, not really a big fan. Nightmare on Elm Street, definitely not my thing. Um, how about we talk about Karate Kid?
Yeah, so The Karate Kid, I feel like, was a big movie when I remember watching it over and over and over again.
Yeah,
But they just came out again with a whole show, Cobra Kai.
yeah,
So if any of you guys have kids out there, you probably have your kids that are now watching Cobra Kai. 2020, 2010, is that what it was? Anyway,
yeah,
so Cobra Kai, The Karate Kid, these are real good, solid lessons, right?
yeah.
Like this is a lesson in life sort of situation. Um, so
Discipline,
yes,
right? Yeah,
discipline, and then, facing your adversaries, like all these
yeah.
really good important lessons out there. But Karate Kid originally in 1984. I remember watching it through the 90s too, so pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, came
So
out with a
just
couple sequels, right?
yeah,
I
so
think.
redid the movie in 2010. Cobra Kai series came out in 2018. And we'll
Oh,
put
there
the
you go.
links
There
to
you
all
go.
of that beautiful stuff. Absolutely. Do you remember like Wax On? Wax On.
Yes, yes,
Wax
of course.
On. Wax On. And he did it for hours and hours and hours. And that was just like just even like having that attention span, right? Like it's just so many lessons when you think like I think back then you didn't realize it because we were just like in it like oh my god it's amazing, but today if you actually take the time to reflect on the actual movies you're actually able to say oh my god like like when we had the conversation about everything all the TV shows and what they brought to the table and
Hmm.
um I think it's just interesting. Karate Kid is a good one. Yeah, like if you haven't had your kid watch the original Karate Kid, definitely something to do over the holidays.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
All right. What else do we have on this list? Stand by Me. Oh my God, one of my favorite movies of all time. The Journey of Four Boys. Did you watch it?
I don't think that I've watched it, no.
No, going on
Don't
an
look at
adventure.
me.
No, no, absolutely not. You know what? Put it on your
I
list.
was more
Watch it
like
with your kids.
Sandlot side. I don't even know when Sandlot falls in any of this, but that might have been more of a 90s movie. Is that a 90s movie?
I
I don't
don't even
know.
know. I don't
I don't
even think
know.
I've ever heard of that one.
The
Um,
Sandlot? What are you talking about? You've never heard of the Sandlot? Seriously?
Sandlot?
The Sandlot. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Okay.
No.
Well, Anne-Marie, we're just gonna have to look it up and make sure we find some good stuff. So we have, let's see, Stand by Me, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like that's a classic. That's a really good one. 90s movie, or this is still in the 80s here. 16 Candles, good one. Beetlejuice, good one. I remember watching Beetlejuice over and over and over again. I thought it was hilarious, first of all. I don't know why I liked that one, but wasn't really into some of the other kind of gory ones. But anyway, I like Beetlejuice. So 1980s was a solid movie choice. I think if you try to get your kids to watch it now, they're probably going to start to be bored to tears. But like we were just talking about, like the Karate Kid was redone in 2010. It means that we're having some of these movies that are going to get a kind of a facelift and like like a look at it second time sort of thing. So of course, the ones we're listing out were some of the top ones. You probably have other movies that you remember from the 80s and the 90s. So let us know. Before we finish up some of this conversation in the 80s, you want to talk about Michael J. Fox? Because you watched
Yeah,
that
I
movie.
did. I did. And you know what? For all of you who haven't had a chance to watch it, watch the movie. It is definitely eye-opening. I think a lot of us know what happened to Michael J. Fox, but he started his career. He was actually, I'm so excited to say, he was born in Western Canada in Edmonton, which is where I am from. Or where I'm living right now. And he actually went to school with my cousin. So they went to
Oh,
the same high school. I know. We, had a conversation about it. And he's like, yeah, he went to my high school. So originally from Edmonton, made his way finally out to LA. Was a struggling actor. And I think one of the things is if you watch the movie, you'll see that he was a very small child. So he was, he didn't look like an adult. He didn't like he was go trick or treating with his sister, and people would think that he was the younger brother. So he struggled a lot, like appearance wise and all of that. So I think he eventually went to LA, and he struggled for many, many years, and then he got his big break on Family Ties. And the producers of Family Ties, I think they didn't think he was funny and that he wasn't the right character, so they actually said no to him at first until
hmm.
they actually went. And I'm going to stop this now because we can cut and edit, but I just need to deal with a little something right now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, so he finally got his big break on Family Ties. I'm not going to tell you guys the whole story because then you're not going to watch the movie. But he was finally a huge success. He gets the part in Back to the Future at the same time as he's doing his recording of Family Ties. Anyway, so his career is kicking off. He meets his wife, all this beautiful stuff. In 1998, actually, he disclosed in 1991 that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
In
He was
91?
in 91. He was, if I'm
Oh
not
my
mistaken,
gosh.
28 years old. Like the start of
When,
his career, he wasn't even 30, I believe, when he got diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So that was big, that was big. But what's
yeah.
really amazing about his story and his wife, who he met on Family Ties, is he dedicated to his life to, he founded the Michael J. Foundation, and he has been doing everything in his power and using, his status and the fact that he has this platform to raise awareness about Parkinson and raise funds and money to find a cure and be like that advocate and that person to talk about Parkinson's disease. So
Hmm.
I think, very sad story. But I think he's done such good in the world to help that cause. And he is a fighter. If you watch that
Yeah.
movie, like every day he wakes up and he, you know, fights to just get through the day. So yeah, I encourage all of you. We'll put definitely the link in the in the chat below for this movie, but definitely an idol of mine as I was growing up. Like we talk about
Yeah.
posters on our walls, and he was definitely one of those people. So to see where he is today is very touching and hits close to home just because I grew up with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting when you were saying this, you were saying he was on Family Ties and Back to the Future at the same time.
Yeah.
And Matthew Perry was saying something very similar. Like he was on Friends and he was doing another movie at the same time. I'll have to look it up. But it seemed like that was the status that you wanted to get to. You wanted to get to
Yeah.
be on a show and you wanted to be in a movie at the same time. And that was the level. And I just think like at this moment, all the actors and actresses and people we go to see movies to watch, like we see them on 5, 6, 7 movies at the same time, or they're in 4 or 5 different Netflix originals or whatever. Like it's just the standard now that people are running and running and running and going all over and being really good actors for so many different positions, which it was just because you and I had seen different things at the same time, like you were watching Michael J. Fox, I was looking at Matthew Perry at the same time. It just is fascinating that that is the status that has been set for people
Yeah.
in that industry. Now, we're not a part of the industry at all. Like we just are the beautiful people who love to watch everything and just like sit down and enjoy that. But I think about what an exciting and probably very busy life that those people live just to be able to get onto the next show. And I know Matthew Perry was talking about it in his book too. So
Yeah.
anyway, I just heard the different correlations and I thought that was
Yeah,
fascinating.
no,
So
absolutely interesting. And I think the one thing that I got out of it is, when they approached Michael J. Fox to do that movie, Back to the Future, he could have passed on the opportunity. Like you say no, and then that could be like,
done.
if the opportunity's there, jump on the bandwagon and go with it. But I think that if he didn't, I don't know that his career would have taken off. And you know what? I was looking at, like, he did Family Ties 1982 to 1989. He did Back to the Future and the Future trilogy from 1985 to 1990. He did Teen Wolf in 1985. He did another movie in 1987. He did another movie in 1989. So it was
Yeah.
all condensed at the same time. And I think he's like, I don't know, but I'm just thinking if you struggle for so long, now the opportunity comes knocking at your door, you just go with it. And if you watch the movie, you will see that he had a driver literally drive him from each set, bring him home, pick him up in the morning, drive him back. So I think at the time,
Yeah.
if you're going to go to Hollywood, then you need to do anything that you can do to make it.
Well, and now he's using all of this prestige, all of that time, all that effort in there to bring awareness to a really amazing cause. I mean,
Yeah.
like that is important. Matthew Perry, when he was still alive, he was huge supporter of AA, really got into
Yeah.
that as his community, as his network, as his like he was sponsoring other people. I mean, using that in a really important and impactful way for the society is huge. The other thing is like we think about our world now and we're seeing all these role models from the 80s and the 90s that we um obviously were pivotal in our upbringing, and what can we do at the same time, like what are we doing now, are we aspiring like we have to all of these actors and actresses and people who were just in different important films for us, are we doing the same with our life, like what can we do to affect that in a huge way, and whatever your passions are, we in my household, this is totally kind of random, but in my household we're really big on we try not to use any single use plastics. So we have this big thing around not using single use plastics, like we have like almost a funny little thing, like how can we get around from buying something that would possibly have single use plastics in it, or can we use a plastic thing a second time that wasn't supposed to be used a second time, right? So all these funny little things that we try to do to impact the world, but maybe just giving that challenge out there to our listeners to say, like, these people are doing really huge things with their world, and we can do it at a smaller level in our own space. So, little aside there for Marie and my insights on what do I take away from all these people that are doing really cool stuff. And I'm thankful that Michael J. Fox is using his voice to something that's super important and a disease that's obviously impact the majority of his life, which is really huge. So anyway, that was 1980s movies. Do we want to go on to the 90s? I feel like we should
Absolutely.
graduate to the 90s.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so 90s, what are we looking at? Same thing here. Goodfellas. Are you a fan?
No, I don't know that I've ever watched it. Yeah, I
Oh,
feel like I have to like set up my cue list a little bit differently now.
yeah. Goodfellas, big in my family. We watched it. I think we watched it multiple times. So definitely at the top of the list. Then we have Schindler's List, Pulp Fiction, Jurassic Park, Private Ryan. Um, watch those. It was kind of like, they came out. They're good movies. They all have a story. Shawshank Redemption, 1994. Have you
Yeah.
watched that one?
Yes, definitely watch that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Um, Matrix, Fight Club, Toy Story, all good movies. Um, Not in my list of, top 10, but the one that did, I think in the 90s is the Titanic.
Oh my gosh, I think Titanic along with like Friends, like can you get much better? Like that's just a fantastic set right there. I remember going to watch Titanic. I don't know how I've seriously probably paid I mean it came out what 1997. I probably paid to watch that in theaters like 7 times with my friends. Of course, all goo goo and gaga over Titanic. But you love Titanic as just a story, so not
I
just like
do. I
the
do.
Leo side of things, because of course we all had to be a Leo DiCaprio
You know
fan.
what?
But
I am not a Leo DiCaprio fan.
okay.
Yeah, I love the Titanic. I was mesmerized by the story of the Titanic as a child. I had books on it growing up. We talked about it in school. Um, I just think the idea of having this ship in the ocean sink and like it's just yeah, I was just mesmerized by it. So when the movie came out, I definitely went to see it for different reasons, not for the same reasons as I guess a lot of people. But yeah, it was, big screen and I loved obviously I think I was more attracted to the music. So Celine
Mm,
Dion and the soundtrack of that movie was to me phenomenal. So yeah, loved it. I would definitely watch it today. I think it's just a story. It's a true story, right? And I think that's
yeah.
what drew me to watching it on the big screen.
Yeah, we watched Titanic recently. My kids were doing a study and we watched it again for the historic aspect of it, and it's just fascinating. Same thing with Saving Private Ryan. I mean, that has a lot of historic, um, all kinds of historic inside of that one. The Matrix, though, I've watched recently as well, and that's a interesting storyline considering like how futuristic they thought they were going to be.
Mm,
I always think it's hilarious when they like have these predictions, and maybe we need to go back and all watch The Simpsons a little bit more. I don't know. But like you have these ideas about what the future is going to be, and then a movie comes out in 1999 or whatever, and then we are sitting, 20 almost 25 years later, and you're like, yeah, that's definitely not a thing. Now, I don't remember when The Matrix was actually set. I don't know what year it was set in, but that's not a thing that's here
yeah.
right now. Like that's we're just not into a matrix space at all. And there are a lot of different things, but you keep seeing the glitches and the things and stuff like that. You're like, yeah, it's a glitch in the matrix. So other good lines in there. But so many amazing things, so many great movies, shows, all the things that are on TV there. Absolutely fascinating stuff. If you guys have your favorites, of course, put them in. Let us know what those are. It's always good to hear from you because we're seeing it from one perspective. Obviously, I'm in the U.S. Amp is in Canada. We grew up there. That's where we had our childhood. So you might have something different if you grew up in the UK or maybe you grew up in Australia or something else. So let us know what was big where you were when you were growing up because it's always fascinating to hear that from you.
Yeah, I think you know what? It was really interesting when we started talking about pop culture in the 80s and 90s. Obviously, there's been a lot of cultural shifts. The world has changed today. What we thought was accessible in the 80s and 90s, and that was just very natural and common, today is not, and we live in a very different world. That doesn't mean that what they did back then was wrong. It just means that was the reality of the world. So I do think that, there's lessons to be learned. And if you have the opportunity, go back and watch some of these shows and actually look at them from a different perspective, where you are today, where, I'm in my 40s. Marie is in her 40s today.
Just in
So
your 40s.
it's, so, you have a very different point of view. We live in a very different world. So,
All right, so 80s and 90s, obviously a whole lot of really influential, not only movies but TV shows, things that are fashion, great actors, great people that are doing amazing things in the world. There's probably a lot of sad things that have happened that we didn't even think about, like how many actors have we lost, possibly. And then also like who kind of just faded away, and where are those people now? So it's always fascinating to go back and to look, but then also to take those lessons that we learned through the 80s and 90s and move that into what we're doing today. So appreciate everybody being here and listening. Please do let us know some of those movies, TV shows that are influential in your life. And let's do a little reminiscing for that. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
See ya. Okay.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode of Xennial Mindset Show. We hope that you enjoy the deep dive into unique perspectives that defines our generation. A big shout out to our incredible guest Xennials who shared their stories and insights. If you want to stay connected and continue the conversation, please follow us on social media at the Xennial Mindset Show. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us. Join us again next week as we unpack even more captivating topics, unraveling the threads of the Xennial experience. Until then, this is Marie Mack and Amp signing off. Keep embracing the Xennial mindset and remember, the best is yet to come.